who was 3 times Prime Minister of Britain and a resident of Stourport.
Stanley Baldwin. I think it was Stanley Baldwin.
Yes, Stanley Baldwin.
It's going to be Stanley Baldwin, I think.
Yes, it's Stanley Baldwin, 3 times Prime Minister of Britain in the 1920s and 30s. But his less well-known ancestors played a major role in the development of Stourport. Thomas Baldwin, Stanley's great-grandfather, came to Stourport from Bewdley in approximately 1788. He was a man of middle years and brought with him experience in the iron trade. Within a short time he had become a prominent local employer and businessman. The Stourport foundry with which he was associated was to become famous worldwide for the Baldwin Butts, or hinges. By 1813, Thomas Baldwin was clearly a leading local industrialist, being one of the subscribers to the town clock. Thomas's eldest son, George Pierce, greatly expanded the family's business empire, and it was to be his sons who in 1854 purchased the Wilden works. It was these same sons, who were the product of George Pierce's first marriage, who were greatly involved with the establishment of the Severn Valley Railway. George Pierce and his second wife, Sarah Chalkley Stanley, lived in Lombard Street, where they brought up their family of 10 children. George Pierce's younger brother, Enoch, managed the foundry and lived opposite in Foundry Street. Both brothers were very active in the local Methodist church. By the 3rd generation, the family had acquired an extensive business empire stretching across the nation. It was to be George Pierce's youngest son, Alfred, born 8 months after his death in 1840 from scarlet fever, who was to be the father of Stanley Baldwin, the Prime Minister. In 1870, Alfred bought out his 2 older brothers, George and Stanley, and took over control of the Wilden works, at the same time moving his family into Wilden House. It was he who built Wilden Church and School. At the time of Alfred's death in 1908, he was worth several £1 million and had extensive business interests, as well as being chairman of the Great Western Railway. He's buried in a modest grave in Wilden churchyard. Alfred's cousin Enoch ran the foundry, and he and Alfred were partners in the Anglo works. Enoch was responsible for building the Methodist manse in 1878, and he lived for many years at the Mount, which has now in recent times become a hotel. Both Alfred and Enoch were very active in local politics, both being one-time MPs and local councillors. Enoch's younger brother, Thomas Joseph, was also active in local politics and in local Methodist circles. He was responsible for building, at his own expense, the Methodist schoolroom in 1875. His family home in Lichfield Street is now a guest house. When Alfred Baldwin died unexpectedly in 1908, his son Stanley took over both his business empire and his parliamentary seat. Until he was 41, Stanley Baldwin worked in the family business in Wilden. He was brought up in Wilden House, but when he married in 1892, he moved to Astley Hall, which he rented. Eventually, he and his wife, Lucy, moved to Astley Hall, and this was to remain their Worcestershire home for the rest of their lives. It was here that he spent most of his retirement. While Stanley was involved in the wider political world, his wife Lucy took an interest in the welfare of mothers and babies, and it's thanks to Lucy Baldwin that Stourport acquired a purpose-built maternity hospital in 1929. Changes in industrial technology and in world demand for metal products meant that the family's fortune started to decline during the 20th century. The foundry closed in 1956 and was demolished in 1967 to be replaced by the county buildings. The Wilden works closed in 1959, and some of the earlier buildings are still in use today as part of an industrial estate. After Stanley's death, the family moved away from Stourport, but there are still many buildings in the town today to remind us of the role this family played in Stourport's history. For many members of the Baldwin family, Stourport was to be their last resting place. The Baldwin monuments in Mitton Churchyard contain the earthly remains of 24 members of the Baldwin family.
Well, as a member of Arley King's Youth Club, every Christmas we used to go carol singing. On one particular year, the Reverend Canon Francis took a party of us carol singing, and we finished up at the home of the previous Prime Minister of England, Stanley Baldwin. And this was Astley Hall, and we arrived this evening. It was a cold night, and the Air Rector knocked at the door, and the footman came to the door in all his livery and asked what we wanted. And Canon Francis said, "We come to sing you a few carols, if you would like to hear them." And the footman said, "Just one moment, sir, I'll fetch the master." And there was a ball going on at the time. We waited outside, and Stanley Baldwin himself came to the door, and he invited us all in. Robin Perry and myself had got our violins because we'd been accompanying the singers. We got into the hall, and Mr. Baldwin stopped whatever was going on. He stopped the ball, and Lady Baldwin came into the hall in her long, beautiful green ball gown, and we sang carols with the violin accompaniment. And at the end of the evening, we were each refreshed with a drink of something. Stanley Baldwin shook hands with every one of us, boys and girls, and he asked who'd got the collecting tin for the money. Well, one of the members had got it, and he opened his wallet and he took out a brand new white £5 note, the white ones, and each of it, we'd never seen one. We opened our eyes wide. We thought it was a fortune. It was very generous, and he put it in the tin, thanked us for singing and playing, and wished us good night. So that was an experience for me.